Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy back again, and today we're going to be talking about Technocracy. I was actually going to save this video for like possibly season 2 or season 3 because I really want to focus on like scandals and corruption, but I did put on the board theories, so I may dibble and dabble into theories a little bit, and plus I kind of feel like this topic goes in line with some of the things we talked about, you know, in past videos like mass surveillance and whatnot. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. But before we do get into it, please remember to comment because I want to hear discussion from y'all. So if anything sticks out, drop it in the comments. Let's have discussion. But most importantly, subscribe and like as well. I mean, you don't have to like it if you don't like it, but like, you know, if you know this interests you, please subscribe, come back. Want to see you again. And yeah, other than that, let's get into it. So Technocracy, what is Technocracy, right? I want to start the video off. I'm gonna look down for it, apologize in advance, but I want to give you the definition of it straight verbatim so you know exactly what it is and exactly what we're going to be getting into. Technocracy is a political and social movement that advocates for the replacement of elected representatives and government officials with technical experts and scientists. So keep that in mind for, you know, I guess the backbone of this. Essentially, what Technocracy calls for is replacing all you know of today, all elected officials with science-backed people. So, yeah. The Technocracy movement emerged in the United States, weirdly enough, believe it or not, in the 20th century, early 20th century, and it started gaining more popularity in the Great Depression time period, mainly because people were starting to talk about how things could be easier if they figured out more technical solutions because, you know, workforce issues and because of the economic downturn. Gee, does that sound familiar at all to anything you may have experienced in the past 5 years? The founders of the movement, Howard Scott and Thorstein Veblen, I think I said that right, basically proposed that society should be run by technical experts or scientists. And of course, the scientists would improve efficiency and solve problems, which is such a vague ass statement. Like, oh, okay. Now here's what's going to set off a red flag for some of you before we even jump all the way into it. Another thing that they called for was to replace traditional cash with something that they called energy certificates. And of course, the movement started gaining opposition against it and controversy, mainly from the politicians, because of course, you know, you're challenging their job, right? So they started, you know, opposing it and saying, hey, this kind of questions my position of power and, you know, the way that we have everything set up as an infrastructure thus far. So shut up. But despite all of the opposition, it still started gaining power and popularity in the 1930s and the 1940s. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to talk about this dude. I'm going to be real with you. I'm probably just going to refer to him as this guy or that guy because I cannot pronounce this shit. So yeah, anytime I say this guy or that one guy, whatever, something like that, I'm talking about this dude. So this dude was a Polish American geostrategist, political scientist, and statesman who served under Jimmy Carter as the National Security Advisor. He was also a professor at Columbia University and a member of the Trilateral Commission. So I'm just kind of wetting your lips about this Trilateral Commission stuff. So hold on to the Trilateral Commission. We're going to talk about that in another video. So it has been theorized how Technocracy would play out. And I want you to listen to what I'm saying and think about if you could relate this or correlate this to anything you may already see in modern times. And remember, this is stuff that they kind of formulated or thought about damn near a century ago. So technocrats believe society should be ran between efficiency and rationality. That should be like the foundation. And to a degree, I do actually agree with that, because one thing that they did mention is that there are certain parts of society that I'm not necessarily going to say it doesn't need political influence, but They're basically saying that it should be ran more by people that are experts in that field rather than having some kind of political oversight to it. And I mean, we could see stuff like that happen quite often, where it's like, why don't we, trust the scientists with this instead of someone trying to make, their political take on it, because it's so easy to push an agenda with politics, right? And, we could think about stuff like this when it comes to like the FDA, when it comes to, even the way we use energy. There are certain things where it's like, maybe we should think about, what are we putting in our bodies versus like someone who could be lobbied, like a politician, right? And they may say, we'll approve, red 40 to be, legal in the United States because I got paid to it. While, scientists may say, hey, don't ever put that in food because it has blankety blank side effects. So on paper, all this kind of stuff sounds good, right? So just keep that in mind. There may be points in here where you're like, that sounds sketchy, and there may be points where you're like, I don't know. And because of that foundation, it broke down into a few key principles as well that we're going to discuss. So just kind of bolstering down, one of those points mentioned earlier is that society should be ran by experts rather than, political people who have too much power. So that was one thing it talked about, is technical experts need to be, appreciated more and put into positions of power in their own fields to make things more efficient, since, that's all they're about is efficiency. And of course, like I said, rationale or whatever. So that was one of the key points. So just to kind of further prove the point as well, they said that we should move on to a merit-based system when it comes to selecting government officials, meaning, I don't know, instead of elections, it would almost be like a job interview. But at the end of the day, it also just makes me think about who sits at the top of, this hiring process. I don't know. But yeah, so a merit-based government system as well. So as I mentioned earlier, replacing cash with what they called energy certificates. So technocracy and technocrats believe that the most precious thing in society is energy itself. And we should be figuring out ways to not only turn energy into, of course, a resource, but also into a currency. They even argued that energy is the most fundamental key factor of gauging someone's wealth, which, to a degree, I guess you could see that. You think about you and your nice apartment or whatever with electricity and AC blowing versus, I don't know, someone living outside and dealing with the harsh elements. So, I mean, again, I guess that kind of makes sense. But according to their take, society itself should be benchmarked on those resources. So in a sense, the wealthy would be gauged on how much energy that you can have or obtain or afford, I guess. This is where it gets interesting. So it talks about the control of production and distribution. So in other words, it said the authority of production and distribution should also be tied up to technical experts, which is very interesting because it does mean that, like, if they deem something to be a waste of resources, then all of a sudden it stops, which again is very subjective because that goes into, what do you deem useful? Is it useful because it promotes and betters society, or is it useful because it's popular and it sells a lot? See, that already makes a crossroad right there. And in a sense, that kind of strays away from democracy a tad bit. So just little tugs like that, you got to think about, what does that truly mean? Another one of their principles is sustainable development. I mean, you could just think of that pretty run of the mill. So sustainability, look out for the environment, and we should be thinking long term, as in we should be thinking beyond ourselves and be thinking towards future generations about what we want to leave this planet in, as far as like the state and the health of it. And we should always be thinking of sustainability about our environments and making sure that we're choosing every environmental friendly outcome as we possibly can. Another bullet point is social planning, stating that society should be planned based on technical and scientific resources. And it's funny because a lot of these bullet points just feel vague, but we're gonna see what's up soon. Before we move further though, it should be noted that technocracy is not a political movement. It is not a political party. It is a social construct. It is a social thought, meaning that without anything necessary, it doesn't have to officially be stamped as a country's form of government. This could be something that is almost like an overlay, or I guess an underlay. So that's why I say that, like, you can see some of these elements potentially present themselves to you without it ever being an official thing. It's very hard to describe. In a sense, you could argue that it is a government with inside of a government almost. Like, it can sit there and it can be alongside democracy or alongside, a dictatorship or an oligarch. Matter of fact, that's another term as well, is like a technical oligarch or a corporate oligarch. And some of these terms kind of have overlaps with each other as well. They even argue that even though these technical experts are there making decisions, potentially, government level decisions, that the power still belongs to the people. However, according to the critics and the criticisms, they actually say that something like technocracy erases democracy and it takes the voice and the power away from the people. Which, to a degree, that could make sense. Because like I said, when it comes to something like technocracy, on paper it sounds kind of good, I guess. But like when you think about it in the worst case scenario, I mean, who's to say that if these technical experts believe that something is for your own good, that you actually have a say in it? Who's to say that? One criticism is that with something like technocracy, it will cause a lack of representation. Because again, you have to be experts in the field, and this would require that there is equal representation of experts in any given field, which that may not be the case. So because of that, you could easily have certain demographics and certain groups that completely are excluded from solutions, or they have solutions that are set in place without any of their consideration because they have little to no representation. Another critique is that they may overemphasize on efficiency, and because technocracy focuses so deeply on efficiency, best way I could describe it is people criticize it for potentially breaking too many eggs to make an omelet. So because of that, we may neglect equity, we may neglect justice, and even representations like I mentioned earlier. Also, another criticism is bias, because we're all human. And even though these people may be technical experts, that still could leave room for them being biased and blind to any other concerns when it comes to anything. And I mean, we've seen this all the time in movies. There's always a mad scientist who takes it too far. They say something's for the greater good and people are either compromised or die because of it. I mean, these are all possibilities that could happen under something like technocracy. Not only that, but society as a whole is very complex, right? So to put something as complex as society, and I mean at any level, if we're talking city level, it's still complex. We're talking state level, it's complex. Country level, continent, global, it's complex from the top to the bottom. And trying to put all of this into the hands of people that are technical experts, I mean, are they going to be overwhelmed? Are they going to cut corners? Is it going to be too much for them? Probably. And I mean, who knows? But I mean, then again, is it too much for the people that govern us now? I don't know. That's for you to decide, I guess. I don't know. But that's another criticism as well. And one of the last big criticisms of it, before we start getting into, other topics, is potentially the lack of adaptability. So kind of touching on the last point of how complex society is, things could change very quickly. And if we have people that are technical experts in certain fields, they could potentially be too pigeonholed in a field to not understand of emerging technologies, trends changing people. What a tongue twister. Trends changing people and other things that could, arise from this. Now we can get into comparisons of technocracy with other well-known and established political ideologies. So technocracy and socialism have a little bit of a parallel, mainly because they are saying that society, for the most part, should be left up to experts. However, there is a little bit of difference when it comes down to resources. While socialism wants to focus on spreading out resources as well as redistributing wealth, technocracy focuses on making resources more efficient. And of course, when it comes to wealth, I explained the whole energy kind of stuff earlier. Technocracy and fascism is kind of sort of similar, but some of the differences is when it comes down to power. So fascism, of course, is opposing any different political beliefs and one centralized power over the people. While of course technocracy is focused on the experts telling people what to do. Meritocracy is very similar, where it focuses on promoting and putting people into positions of power based off of their merits, but there is a little bit of a difference between the two. Meritocracy is focused on people's qualifications from experience as well as their abilities, while technocracy is focused on the management of society by experts in very niche, pigeonholed fields. So now we're going to get back into that guy, this guy, and we're going to talk about why does he fit into this. So although he wasn't directly affiliated with the movement itself, he still strongly believed in the ideologies and basically believed the society should be ran the way that they talk about with all of their principles and whatnot. So he believed that society should be run by experts. He believed that it should be a more technologically focused run government, and even going as far as saying that technology itself should be used to kind of push government forward and start making decisions, on its behalf. So he even wrote a book about this, claiming that as technology improves, we're going to start seeing more shifts in power from our traditional politicians from the past to more technical experts. And it's funny because I kind of think about the stuff I mentioned about Facebook, right? Talking about how, they were using, Facebook to kind of manipulate elections and things like that. Like this is the kind of shit we're talking about right here, is like hitting us in the face. And don't worry, at the end, I'm going to actually talk about a few different practices that you can see played out officially that technically have the characteristics of technocracy. This guy also mentioned that because of the emerging technology that was evolving, as well as society itself growing and becoming more complex, it would require a new government. I'm not going to say the NWO, I'm not going to say that, but it will require a new government to take hold of this. Now, despite talking about some of the technocracy aspects earlier, this guy did still believe that although technocracy was the way to go, that we should still leave room for democracy and that people have a voice. So I don't want to make him sound like a complete villain or something like that, but he did still believe that democracy was important, or at least that's what he said. Who knows what he believes. So for the most part, that was his opinion on technocracy as a whole. He did mention that democracy should still reign and that the hands and the power should not be ultimately left up to these experts. Now, keep this guy in mind because, like I said, when we cover the Trilateral Commission, he might come back up again and there may be some more details about him. But other than that, let's jump into some examples. Believe it or not, one of the first instances of a technocratic society trying to have an attempt was in Chile between 1971 and 1973. It used management science, cybernetics, and telex-based support. It was under the government of President Salvador Allende, but ultimately it failed. But it was the first official attempt, or one of the first official attempts of trying to apply technocracy to an economy and a government. The Green New Deal is a proposed package of policies that talks about climate change and trying to fix it, as well as a few other aspects such as inequality. Although not officially stamped officially as technocracy, it has a lot of technocracy attributes to it. So that got kind of people looking at it like, maybe this is another attempt. And again, like I said before, you're probably never ever gonna hear someone actually say this is technocracy, because technocracy itself is almost like an adjective of a government. It's like, it's blankety blank type of political ideologies with blankety blank technocratic accents to it almost. It's like a seasoning, the way I say it. Yeah, it's like a seasoning to a government, right? So it's not going to be the actual government itself. You wouldn't just eat a whole mound of black pepper. I hope not. But you may sprinkle some black pepper on something, right? And that's kind of what technocracy is. So just keep in mind what I said about the principles, and keep in mind, about these weird forms of currency taking place and what that could mean for you. So yeah, technocracy is essentially a form of government, but not an official type of government, not an official type of political way to run things, but instead like an accent. So you could see it alongside democracy or alongside anything else, especially with the way technology is growing today. So some of the elements to look out for, of course, is money changing, climate change initiatives, even potentially trying to get it to run or make decisions based off of the government. So governmental decisions based on technology or even AI, right? And another thing you have to think of as well too is like a lot of these talking points came from like a century ago. So you have to kind of put your mind into where you think that would grow and evolve into today, and where do you think that's going to grow and evolve into tomorrow. So that's technocracy, essentially. And again, we're probably going to bring up technocracy in other facets or forms, but yeah, just look out for it. And if you see any other future videos that sound like technocracy, say that's technocracy. But other than that, y'all, glad you could join me for this video. Yeah, I'll see y'all in the next one. Other than that, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, the big four. Hit me with the big four. But other than that, y'all, hope you have a fantastic day, and I guess I'll see y'all next week, right? Right?